It is the 21st of March 2020. The heart says, I only want God, the only reality. I only need God, the only reality. Guru. My name is Lucas, and I have a special opportunity today. I get to talk to one of the path's big brothers. He has lots of very interesting and inspiring chapters in his life, and he's been a professor, an author, a speaker, a manifester. He's guiding a business, the Garden of Light, and much, much more. And I'm very happy to have the chance to ask him a few questions. And his name is Utsahi.
Thank you, Lucas, for the opportunity. I appreciate that because it's a moment to reflect on life and on the gifts of life. You know, the many gifts that I have received since I became a student of Sri Chinmoy in particular. Thank you.
Before I want to ask you about how you became a disciple, I would like you to start with a little story. And for people that don't know you well, they would probably say, "Oh yeah, the cheerful one with the bowls." So I know you have a special experience that helped you to grow into a relationship with the bowls. Would you mind to share that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I was a visitor to Ottawa. I don't say that in my other conferences, but anyways, I was a visitor here, and there was a sign on outside of a door on the sidewalk saying free singing bowl experience or workshop, something like that it says. And I didn't know what singing bowls were, but I knew what free meant, so I went in. And as soon as I heard a bowl, the first bowl that this person played, I was transported in a ways that I can't explain. But maybe if I can just say two words about that, I was in another time and space, that's for sure. And that time and space was beautiful, and it was amazing, and it was a place and time where I could admire and appreciate and love these sacred sounds. And then my mind picked up after that and said, how come these have been invented, if I can say the word, by whom, when, and all of these questions. So that was the introduction to the singing bowls. And at the end of that session, I said to myself, one day I'm going to have a bowl. So that day has come. You can see here in my meditation room, there's a few sacred ones for me. And then the Garden of Light opened, and we have one of the first things that I thought about was to have, we need singing bowls in here. So there we are.
Good. So yeah, then I would like to ask you about the basically the most essential question. How did you become a disciple, and what were the circumstances of your upbringing?
Well, there was problems in my life, like in everyone's life, and it would be too long to explain them all. But one of the challenges was I was a father. I had young kids, a marriage, 2 jobs, and raising kids in such a context was, in none of these contexts was easy. And I was not satisfied with the relationship that I had with one of my children, because I felt that I could do better than that or more than that anyway. So that's part of the context. And in order to remain as kind of calm as possible, I was taking yoga classes, and I was practicing yoga practically 1 hour per day. I'd done that for years, for maybe at least 10, if not more, years. When it came time to my 40th birthday, the yoga teacher Eugène, he said, "How old are you, Utsahi?" It was not my name then, but I said, "I'm 40 years old." And then he said, almost immediately, he says, 40 is an interesting age in the traditions. I'm not sure if he said which one, but in the traditions. I said, "Yeah." He says, "It's the time when you have accomplished your outer goals and you have to turn to your inner goals." So at that time I had finished my PhD, I had written a book, and I was very proud of myself. And I had a family, 2 kids, 2 cars, 2 jobs, 2 of everything, basically. But then that's what was lacking, the kind of the spiritual dimension. And when he said you have to turn to your inner goal, that it hit really hard, because I thought to myself, wow, what am I doing with my life? So that's the kind of one of the breaking points. And as coincidence oblige, this guy at the university that I was kind of training him to do yoga, this professor, he said, "Oh, there's this guy comes into town every Sunday morning, and you'd like to see him. You'd like him." So sure, I was there that next Sunday, and this guy was coming from Halifax, and that was my first time that I met someone belonging to what I did not know was the Sri Chinmoy group, Sri Chinmoy, Path of the Heart. He was kind of bizarre in his own ways. The first thing he asked us is to go for a run together, because he had just traveled 2.5 hours to get there, and he was tired in some ways, restless in some other ways. So he says, "Let's go for a run." So we're in the mid-80s, go for a run. None of us had sneakers except him. And but anyways, then I was touched a lot by the way he ran. Took me a long time to reflect more on that, but anyways, the way he ran was incredible. So that was the first thing. And then the other thing that I mentioned...
Sorry, excuse me, you mean the way he ran inspired you in
some
way?
Oh yeah.
So was it some poise or...
Oh, elegance, poise, peace. Basically he was almost flying. And I heard thereafter that he was not qualified, but he was described as a gazelle, and he was running like a gazelle.
So not what he was doing; it was how he was doing it that struck you.
Both what he was doing, because in the mid-80s, running in Moncton, New-Brunswick, there was all the prejudice against running were there. So he ran with so much elegance and poise and beauty, I would say. So that was, I see his step to this day. I see his steps. Okay, so barely touch, and eventually he made a lot in running, in the running world. So that was the first thing. And the other thing is that he pushed the button on the tape that he had with him, and we heard these beautiful voices, Akasha.
As you were running?
No, as we came back.
Sorry. Okay.
As we came back in, one of the first things he did, he introduced himself, etc., and then he played Akasha. And me, I was from a Christian background, and the only reference I had was angels in terms of that singing. And for me, if they were angels, they were there.
Ah,
So that's the first two things I would say. I could say more, but that's the first two things I would say about that first encounter with Guru.
okay. Wow. One of the many things that you've been involved with on the path is giving classes. And I know that it means a lot to you. And sometimes now that I've been living with you, after the classes you come home and you're just silent for quite a while, and then I kind of know, okay, I just leave that soulfulness in the room. So I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to give classes?
Means a lot. That's how I became a disciple myself, through a class. Right. And every time I think and hope that every time that I do, it's not give a class, it's share. It's not give. Give is a kind of a word that we use in a utility way, but it's sharing. It's not me that's giving the classes. I'm 1,000,000% sure of that. Anyways, before I would start, I would remember that first encounter that I had with Guru's disciple at the time, and how, and I would pray that, I do pray that some of that inspiration can transpire through me. So that's one of the first things. And then you have these, we call them seekers. It's a beautiful word. And they want something. They want light. They want peace. Same thing that I wanted myself, and that we all want in life. And so that's what they want. And then they come, they see the transcendental photo of Sri Chinmoy, they see a candle, they see flowers, and they see Prabhakar and I, because I hope I can name him here, working as a team together to give these classes. And then the rest is, I would say, is not in my hands. And beauty and miracles happen in their own way. We don't know really. I would have only one little example to give, but I could give many more, but we don't know what goes on in people's minds and hearts during and after a meeting like this. And we just hope and pray that the best happens to them in their life, and that they can change in their own ways. Anyways, I started to give classes when I was young. I was maybe 1 year or two on the path, and I was in Moncton, New-Brunswick. There was no other disciples around, and I wanted to share that message of Guru. So I started to give classes as a young disciple, and many people came, of course. We had a free room then, it was a yoga room, and I was a professor there, so it was easy to have a free room, like now. And so this guy comes, and he's seriously handicapped. And then he had manners and stuff like this. But one word or one thought that we shared in that class stayed with him to this day. It's 40 years later. To this day, because he's a compulsive caller, and no one takes his call basically. But I do take his calls. I don't mind. And he every time he calls me, he reminds me of Sri Chinmoy. He calls him Sri Chinmoy. The photo he has on his altar of Guru, and then this quote that we shared in that first meeting that we had where he was, and to this day, literally, it transformed his life. So that's one example, but there's many more. There's people that I continue to be in touch with in one way or the other, that have been touched by Guru's message, like I've been touched. and that continue. But I don't know the inner world. The inner world doesn't belong to me really. But all I can do is try and continue that cycle of beauty that happened through me when I was in the mid-80s in Moncton.
So, yeah, a little question about that. In my little mind, manifestation is almost not supposed to be easy, because it's going where it's needed, and where it's needed there's almost likely to be resistance. So, for example, in this scenario, you were fresh on the path, and there was no other disciple to lean on for this project of giving classes. So what would be your advice, maybe even to yourself in that situation, or to others, that are in similar shoes at that point, when nothing obviously is guaranteed, and you just try?
Well, I had good help and assistance from the people that I was belonging to were the Halifax Centre people. So I had good help from them, and we had joy days those days, and many things happened through them and with them and because of them, and because of this guy that I had met. But then I was in Moncton, and I wanted to share that, so I would rely on them to some extent, and probably use one of Guru's books at the time. I didn't have that many, and a few of Guru's aphorisms and stuff like this, and start with that. And the rest was a bit of my yoga kind of experience myself, in terms of relaxation, breathing, etc., and then mantras and things like this. So these things happen. We don't know how they happen. They happen through us, and see, when we don't think we have all the means. Today we have so many means to teach meditation classes, or to share, not teach, to share meditation classes and the beauty of meditation. But when we don't have those resources come in their own ways, like the bowl came in its own way. And this seeker from another center came in his own way, etc., etc. Then we would go to New York, etc., etc. I would read just a passage of Guru. You don't have to read 20 books of Guru before, in my case, before you're transformed by Guru. So a passage was enough for me. I'm not a big reader. Okay, I read a little bit and I have enough. So I kind of reflect on that and appreciate that, etc., etc. So that's how it evolves. And because you don't have the outer resources, I guess in some ways we become maybe more creative in the inner resources that we have, in that inner experience of meditation that we acquire with time and with Guru's wisdom.
I actually had a question.
Go ahead. Just wanted to add something.
Right.
That in giving classes, I really have to say that there was a gift that was given to me. A special gift was to work with someone. And in this case, you know who I mean, and I named him before. But it's an incredible opportunity and gift to work with someone, and to be able to. I don't know how to say that really without tears. There's so many possibilities that come to us through sharing these moments, and in my case, giving them with a disciple who has become an extremely close friend of mine is one of those beauties. So it's not something that's why it's very humbling to say that, because nothing of this comes from me. I'm from a farm, and I was brought and raised on the farm, and I could not stay on the farm because my father said, well, the first boy stays on the farm and the others have to go to college. So that's how come I went to college. Not because I'm bright, because I'm second. And the third one went to college too. Okay, so we're two college guys in my family, and the one stayed on the farm. So I'm a farmer, really. And I like to relate to Guru that way also, because of the transcendental, which has thy golden plow. Anyways,
I actually had the question, with all these different fascinating chapters of your life, where you experienced ups and downs, especially also nowadays with this global, how should I call it, experience, I guess, for now. How you go through these times as a disciple. I guess you partly already answered it with being open to the solutions that come in their own way, but maybe specifically to what is happening nowadays, to this global experience. How do you experience it as a disciple?
Well, times of uncertainty is also times of opportunities. And these, we're forced to change. The world, I see it a little bit this way. I don't know. There will be a lot of theories about what's going on now as time goes and as we get out of this panic mode. But really, panic is just about the worst word that we can use and the worst attitude we can have. So that's where meditation becomes a great essential, I would say, to see clearly as much as possible, or to surrender, because that's really what we have to do. So in terms of my own life experience with having an enterprise and being a father and grandfather and having a few other little things in my life, this is what I find reassuring, that none of these things happen for nothing, and we will evolve out of this in whichever way to become closer to the Supreme. And that might be difficult times for us all, including people who have enterprises like me and a lot of other people around the world, and people who have health issues, and people who will suffer a lot through this. But I'm sure that there's a reason behind all this. So surrender is I find one way to navigate through that and remain as peaceful as possible, and keep hope in all this, that through these clouds and through these moments something will happen, something beautiful, like the world has evolved in many beautiful days. In all of these times, when we look at history, there's been rough times too. We're not the first part of history that has a rough experience, but now there's another one, and we'll come out of this more beautiful as human beings, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
To bring it back a little bit in time, pretty straightforward, what was it like for you personally to be in Guru's presence?
Ho, 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 ho. There's too much to say, and I want to say it without tears. Well, first of all, I have to say that when I wanted peace and I went to that first meditation class, I was not particularly wanting a guru. Sorry to say that. Very sorry to say that. Being on a farm and being independent and being my own decider for everything else, my career, etc. So I did not want a guide, I have to say. And but the guide came and offered his help and did not force anything or anyone, including me. But then when I first met him in New York, the new seekers that were there, Guru asked the participants and the seekers to sing Dak Isiche, Call Has Come. That was a start. And then I did not understand, and I was a lot in the mind then, and I was saying to myself, what's going on here, what's going on here? But the guy who had introduced me, the professor in Moncton who had introduced me, he was with me, and he says, how much light around this man. So I was a little bit jealous. But then gradually the master and the guru idea came as a possibility. The door opened, okay? The saying is, I have it here, beyond speech and mind, into the river of ever effulgent light, my heart dives. Today, thousands of doors, closed for millennia, are opened wide. So I guess one of these 1,000 doors opened, and I started a little bit to appreciate what a guide can do and what a guru is. And it's over time it became incredibly beautiful, including time spent closer to Guru. He gave me my name. He gave us the name of the Garden of Light. He blessed me. He lifted me. I mean, it could be on and on and on. He visited the Garden of Light. I saw him in New York hundreds of times, literally hundreds of times. And so, anyways, it became the essential or the most beautiful experience in my life.
And then 2007, Mahasamadhi.
Oh, yeah.
And did something change for you? Now it's 2020. Did your disciple life change in any way? Because for me, I see you every day several times, and in each time there's a cheerful glow around you. So, yeah, did something change?
Well, that too was a test. And it was not easy. I was in Montreal, and it was about, by the time I heard about it, I didn't have a cell phone. By the time I heard about it, it was something like 5 p.m., and I was there to give a class. And no one knew what to do. No one knew what to do. I was giving a meditation class at 7. And all I could say to myself was, what would Guru do? And the voice came and said, give your class. It might be crazy to some people. Sure, it's maybe crazy, sure, but in times of distress, you do what you can, okay? And you cry later. So I give the class. And then you realize how much you have, if I can say this word, how much you have lost in the physical presence of Guru, not being there anymore. And what will happen to me as a person, to the center, to the whole center, etc., etc., etc. So many questions. And then, well, by the time I arrived back in Ottawa, everyone had left for New York, so I went in my old Festiva. My son has fun when he reflects on this. By myself in an old Festiva, drove to New York. But that was good in a ways, because I had time to myself. And I could prepare myself for the shocking moments that were started to happen there. And then, well, you go through this, and in which way do we receive the strength to go through such experiences? I just don't know. But I did, and we did. Thank you. But then, as time goes, I realized at least, that Guru's not gone. Guru's still there. He's there in more present than before. He's there in so many ways. And if you kind of turn the page on an event and what we call death, then other lives come and other possibilities come. And so he's still around. So that took a while for me to move from that date to, let's see, another attitude, or etc., etc. But it did happen, and it does happen. And the classes, come back to your classes, to the classes there, it's another occasion to reflect on that too. Because some people ask, did anyone replace him? No. You don't replace a guru. You follow his teachings and his inspiration in whichever way they come. And he's there through the transcendental, through the invocation, through his songs and his writings and his birds, etc., etc. He's there through so many of these manifestations that he left with us, that we're not stuck with emptiness here. We're the only word that I have myself at this point is gratitude for all that we have received from Guru and still receive from him.
Mm-hmm. And to end with a lighter question, is there a part or aspect of Guru's manifestation that you particularly like?
One?
Or two, or three?
Well, I find that we're extremely privileged to have all those possibilities. Just think, I'll just name a few. Selfless service. What a concept. Okay. It can go on and on. Just now another one, running. What a concept, and what a beauty. Another one, the birds, Guru's birds. Millions of birds he left with us. To this day, when I look at one bird, I am amazed and marveled at these birds. Guru's poetry, Guru's everything. Basically, he touched so many aspects of life for humanity that we haven't touched. I think we haven't touched 100%, 100% of what Guru has left us. And that I hope that humanity and us, we can continue to manifest some dimensions of his that he left with us. He said, because the first, if I can end with this, the first the first 47 that I did, there was an aphorism on the walls there, on the fence, whatever. We are all truly unlimited. If only we dare to try and have faith. So that first time that I went around and saw that, and my mind could not accept that. We are not truly unlimited. Second time, same thing. 10 times, same thing. No, it's not true. We are not truly unlimited. But as the 47-mile race evolved, and I became a little bit less mental and more open, because when you're tired, you're more open. It's an amazing fact of life. I realized that maybe, then there was a little crack again, maybe we are all truly unlimited. Maybe. And then by the end of the race, I realized that I had forgotten the last portion of that aphorism. If only we dare to try, which I did for the 47, and have faith. So it took me a whole exercise of running 47 miles. It took me probably 10 hours because I'm not a good runner. To realize that if only we dare to try and have faith. And then it's like that in life. So that has continued to inspire me, that little poem, to this day. And I marvel at the changes that can happen within each of us and myself when we dare to try and have faith.
Beautiful. I think that's the perfect ending. Anything else you would like to add? I don't have any questions.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and thank Guru for all of these. That I'm just about 75, and I would not. My ancestors did not live to this time because of my life, whatever the inheritance, my health inheritance. But how come I'm still alive? I just don't know. But every day I say gratitude, and I put it in a physical way, the gratitude that I offer every day for being alive and being with Guru, and the marvels of life. So however long it continues, but to this day I'm and the beaming light that you talked about is doesn't come from me. That I can please be reassured that it's come from someone else that we have talked about in this interview.
Actually, I have a very quick story. There was the other day I ran into a person, and in my own impression, he was somewhat of a seeker, but he was a bit, let's say, tricky to talk to, and I was trying to get a feeling for where his receptivity is, and I was kind of running into some mental protection walls, and suddenly you passed by, and that seeker turned to you and said, "Have you given up?" Out of nowhere, he's just asking you that.
Yeah.
Kind of challenging you even.
Sure.
Without any explanation for the question.
Yeah, I didn't know him.
And you basically said, "I'm 75. Not even close. I'm halfway." And that kind of just broke something in his mind. And he was just silent. And you also suddenly just left.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I had an easy conversation with him. He sat down and I could just talk with him. And I ended up with him at beautiful points.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Utsahi, for being the instrument and inspiration that you are.
Thank you, Lucas, for the opportunity, and good luck to you in life. Continue this journey.
Thank you. I will. Thank you.